Level 1. Shoeless Dreamer. You're 11 in Southgate, California, walking to school in your father's boots with newspaper stuffed in the toes. And in 25 years, a museum will put a shoe you made behind glass. He can't afford new ones, so once a month he brings dead sneakers home from the Citadel Outlet's bins and fixes them at the kitchen table. $4 can of cement, a bent butter knife, sole clamped under the couch leg. In the morning they look new. 40 minutes into the walk, the front of the sole peels open again. Every time. You learn to walk heel first to keep it shut. Sunday swap meet. You've glued a pair of Air Force Ones asking $8. At the entrance of the swap meet, there's Marcus. Everybody knows Marcus. His father's table is on the row for the rich. He picks up your shoe, bends it until the front yawns open, and holds it up. 40 minutes. That's what your whole family's work is worth. You can't argue. He's holding the proof. That night you take the shoe apart and find out why. Only glued, never stitched. 4 cents of thread. Your father's shoes weren't badly made. They were made to a price. 20 years from now, that man will need 1 sentence out of you, and you won't say it. Tonight, you just take the butter knife out of the drawer. Level 2. Street Vendor. You're 16, standing outside the Slauson swap meet with a duffel bag, moving replica Jordans and Yeezys for a wholesaler out of Santee Alley who pays you $9 a pair. And you spend $2.20 of that $9 on cement nobody asked you to buy. Every seller on that stretch between the Taco Bell and the check cashing place runs the same 3 moves. The bag that zips shut in one motion when a cruiser slows down. The price that drops $11 the second a customer turns his shoulder to leave. And I got your size in the car, said by a man who does not have a car. You run all 3. You're good at all 3. You're also the only one carrying a lighter and a butter knife because the glue at the front lets go on this batch around day 4. And you can't hand a man a shoe knowing what it'll do to him on a Tuesday. The guy across from you watched once and asked what was wrong with you. Genuine question. He moves 40 pairs a week and has never thought about day 5. 3 weeks in, a man comes back. You have the speech ready because a customer coming back is never good news. You keep the refund in 5 so it looks like more. He doesn't want a refund. He works nights at the Costco in Commerce. He wants 2 more pairs for his brothers, and he wants them from you. He's bought 4 pairs off this block, and yours is the only one that lasted a winter. That's the first time in your life anybody has come back for your work instead of your price. Word moves out here sideways, in nicknames. Inside 2 months, you're turning triple what the corner across from you does and lying awake about pairs you already sold. Out there right now, on feet, 4 days from deciding what you are. Then Marcus shows up at the drop. You knew he'd land somewhere. His father's table folded and Marcus went straight to the people who supply the tables, the smartest move anybody on that row ever made. He's 21 now, and he runs the wholesaler's routes, which means he sets what you pay. He goes down the clipboard, finds your name, and puts your buy price up $1.40. No warning. Not because you're short, because you're working. You want to build them, you're just paying rent on the block now. You do the arithmetic on the walk home. $1.40 on 9 at your volume is about $120 a month to the dollar, what the extra work was earning you. He found the one thing you were better at than anybody on that street, put a price on it, and handed you the bill. Here's the part nobody tells you about selling fakes. Nobody is embarrassed to wear one. Not one person, not once. They'll tell you it's fake while they're counting money into your hand. What they're embarrassed about is the sound a soul makes when it opens on a crowded bus, and the 11 seconds after, where everybody near them decides something about their life. You're not in the fake business. You're in the doesn't fall apart business, and there's no name for that, and nobody is hiring. Last Thursday in November, a gray sedan parks across from the swap meet and doesn't leave. You clock it inside a minute. Everybody out here clocks a car that parks and doesn't leave. But you've got a lifted toe cap and a customer in 20 minutes, so you go up the alley and do the thing. Lighter, cement, thumb, count. 11 minutes on a shoe you'll sell for $19. When you come out, he's standing by the sedan. 50s, clean coat. He doesn't ask about shoes. He asks how long you've been doing that with the knife. Then he writes an address on the back of a gas station receipt, puts it in your hand, and drives off. You keep that receipt for 15 years. Level 3. Factory worker. The address is a furniture warehouse in Fontana, 60 miles inland, and it's the wrong smell. Furniture doesn't smell like solvent and hot rubber, and you've known that smell since you were 11. Behind the pallet racks, there's a door. Behind the door, there are 200 people making shoes. They put you on sole prep in Bay 3. 900 pairs a shift. 11 seconds a shoe buff, dip, set, pass, and if you go over 11, the belt doesn't wait. It hands you the next one on top of the one you're holding. There are tiers nobody outside this building knows about. Stall junk at $15 Sambas, Air Force Ones, whatever moves. Mid-grade, stitch count wrong in 2 places, which is fine, because 2 places is past what anybody checks. And the top-line Jordans, mostly out of a room at the end of the floor you aren't allowed to walk into. Built off teardowns of real pairs, batch codes correct, packed in retail boxes with the tissue folded right. The tissue is the part that gets you. Somebody here worked out that everybody checks the shoe and nobody checks the tissue, then folded it right anyway. There's a Taco Bell across the lot. You can tell how long a man's worked here by whether he still reads the menu. Marcus is production chief on this floor. Of course he is. The route's fed out of this building. Older, cleaner, still counting. 4 years in, he catches you spending 40 seconds on a shoe instead of 11, and he doesn't pull you aside. He stops the belt which cost this floor $140 a minute so everybody sees the size of what you did. Nobody buys a fake to inspect the stitching. $80 docked. 2 days. So on Sunday you go into the scrap bin. You take out a rejected pair, bad color, and spend 11 hours on it at your kitchen table with the burner going. Then you put it in the group chat the floor guys sell from. It goes for $340. That's more than the top line. More than the room you aren't allowed to walk into. And the buyer messages back asking who made it, and nobody on that floor can answer him. Nobody can answer. The old man in the cutting room is 61. Hands like tree bark, a glasses case in his shirt pocket, 18 years at a real factory before it moved overseas. He's the only one in the building who watched you rebuild that collar instead of watching the price. He tells you there are 2 kinds of shoes in this trade. The kind that get worn out and the kind that end up behind glass. The second kind outlives the man who made it. 40 years in, he's never met anybody who made one. He says it like a warning. You hear it like an address. That night you do the thing you never tell anyone about. You take your father's butter knife to the sole buffer, grind the tip flat to a grain of rice, and press it into the foam under the right sock liner before the pair ships. Not a signature. A signature is for people who expect to be read. It's a dent. Nobody lifts the sock liner out of a shoe they already paid for to look under the foam. That's the whole point. 11 days later, the man from the gray sedan comes down onto the floor, which he does maybe twice a year because he owns it. He walks past 30 people, stops at your station, tells you to clock out. Then he takes you to the room you aren't allowed to walk into and holds the door. There's a bench in there and on it a sealed box. A $400 Nike bought at a store like a normal person. He tells you to take it apart. Level 4. Replica craftsman. 11 months into the sample room, you're weighing in a gled on a jeweler's scale at 2 in the afternoon and you have developed opinions about foam. Real opinions. The kind you'd defend. Here's what nobody gets right and why it doesn't matter until it does. The midsole. Everybody matches the color and nobody matches the durometer, just a number for how hard foam is. And it's why a fake feels convincing in the store and dead underfoot by the 3rd step. You can't see it. You feel it and can't say why. And that's what makes a man quietly stop wearing a shoe he paid for. Then there's the glue line. Factory cement squeezes out along the midsole seam in a color that isn't white and isn't cream and doesn't exist in any bottle sold anywhere. So you mix it. 4 months for one color, and suede lies about its age. Real suede has been under sun and skin warehouse suede has been under nothing, and the difference is obvious to anybody who owned a pair long enough to love it. So you build a box out of a plastic tub and a UV lamp and cook panels 6 weeks, buying a shoe 4 years it never lived. You get all 3. Somewhere around month 9, the room stops arguing with you. Then the collectors find you. Not you. The work. Somebody posts a teardown thread about a run of pairs with no business being this good. And by page 3, they've given the maker a name because that's what people do when they can't have a face. The ghost shoemaker. You read 400 comments about yourself on a closed toilet lid on your 15-minute break. Half are arguing about whether you're one person or a team. One guy is certain you're a retired factory engineer in his 60s. You're 22 with a paper cut from a box. Then you wash your hands, go back out on the floor, and you cannot tell one person in your life what you do for a living. Not a friend. Not a woman. Nobody. That summer, a well-known authenticator posts a 9-minute video. Gloves, lamp, loop. He walks the stitch density on a Jordan 4, pulls the batch code, does the thing with the tongue label that made him famous. He calls it a factory original. It's yours. You built it in 14 days. You watch it in the stairwell with one earbud in because the other ear has to stay on the floor. 200,000 people are looking at your hands and every one of them believes they're looking at somebody else's. You don't tell anyone. There's no version of telling that ends well. Around then, Marcus starts taking meetings. Buyers fly into Ontario, real ones, from real countries, and sit down with him in the front office while he walks them through our top line. He isn't lying exactly. He runs the floor. He hits the numbers. He has also never built a shoe in his life, and every man in that room is nodding at him. That's the night you finally see the shape of what you've built. One object on this planet proves any of it was yours. A dent under a sock liner the size of a grain of rice, and shoes already on other people's feet on other continents, and nobody alive has a reason to look for it. You made yourself impossible to detect. That was the job. You got very, very good at the job. The message comes through the shop's encrypted line in the second week of March, forwarded twice, no name. A man writing to say a fire took his vault, that he had 41 pairs in it, that 40 of them he can live without, and that there are 12 photographs of the one he can't. He wants to know if you'll look at them. They're all blurry. Let me say one thing and then I will not bring it up again. A lot of you asked how I make this style of YouTube videos, so I gathered all my tactics for starting a channel like mine in this guide. If you want it, the link's below. Now let's get back to the video. Level 5. Master Shoemaker. The burn line on the wall of the Newport Beach house is at waist height and runs the whole length of the room, and nobody has painted over it, which tells you something about the man before he opens his mouth. 41 acrylic cases, all empty. He walks you past everyone without explaining a single one, and at the end there's a case that still has ash in it, because he had the room cleaned and told them to leave that one. That's the one, he says. An 85 Jordan sample, never retailed, 22 known to exist. His was one of 4 that still had the original box, and the box is gone too, which he mentions the way other men mention a death in the family. Then he names a number. You will not hear a number like that again for 11 years. It ends every practical problem in your life, permanently, and he says it the way you'd read a time off a departures board. You say no, not because of prison. Prison is a thing that happens in this trade the way rain happens. You price that in at 19. You say no because you cannot build a shoe out of 12 blurry photographs. Nobody can. And the one thing you have never in your life been able to survive is standing at a bench watching yourself be bad at this. So you drive home having turned down more money than your father earned in 22 years of night shifts at the Costco in Commerce. And you feel fine. That's the part that gets you on the freeway. Not regret, the absence of it. You just refused the exact thing every person you grew up with was told would fix everything. Your hands are steady on the wheel, and you cannot work out what that says about you. There's a shoebox on the top shelf of your closet. It's been up there 4 years. Inside it is the last pair your father ever glued, the ones he was wearing, the ones that came back to you in a plastic hospital bag with his watch and his keys. The sole is still split at the toe, exactly where it always split. You have rebuilt shoes that beat a man with a loop and a database, and this pair has been 18 inches above your head the whole time with the toe open, and you never once took it down, because fixing it would have made it a shoe. You sit on the closet floor with it for a while, long enough that your legs go. Then you call the collector back at 1 in the morning. You want the archive, shipping documents, factory paperwork, dealer correspondence, every unpublished photograph money can drag out of an estate. You want him to buy access to things that aren't for sale. He agrees before you finish the sentence. Then he gives you his condition, and it isn't the one you're braced for. The pair can never be sold. Not by him, not by his estate, not ever. It goes into a rebuilt case in a rebuilt room and it dies in there with him. You say yes instantly, because the money stopped being the reason somewhere between the closet floor and the phone, and you'd have done it for the paperwork alone, and you both know it, and neither of you says it. You hand in your badge on a Friday. Marcus does the arithmetic in front of the whole office, out loud, the way he does everything. What the floor loses a week without you. What that costs over a year. What you're worth, expressed in pairs. Then he leans back in the chair. You'll be back in 4 months. You open the drawer under your bench, take out the butter knife, put it in your coat, and say nothing. He's right, obviously. You just don't know why yet. Level 6, factory foreman. You're back in 4 months, not at a bench. The owner meets you in the parking lot before you've asked and offers you Bay 3 the belt. The quota: 200 people because the last foreman quit and everybody knows whose hands are best. Foreman. The only job on earth that pays enough to fund 4 years of one shoe. You take it for exactly that reason and tell yourself that makes it different. So now you're the one who sets the 11 seconds. Third week you catch a kid on sole prep spending 40 seconds on a shoe, cleaning a glue line nobody will ever see, and you feel your own mouth start it. Nobody buys a fake till you stop it halfway out. You stand in front of the belt with the back half of Marcus's sentence in your mouth and nowhere to put it. 200 people, not one looking up. 4 seconds to understand what almost came out and whose voice it was in. So you go down to his station and fix the glue line beside him without a word. Neither of you ever mentions it. Both of you carry it. The build takes 4 years. Not 4 years of montage. 4 years of a rented storage unit off the 10 in Bloomington with a dehumidifier from the Costco in Fontana because leather remembers humidity. A UV box. A gas station lamp bought at 2 in the morning because you needed light more than a good lamp. You eat Taco Bell in the car outside the unit so often the kid at the window stops asking. Thread count matched off a photograph by counting pixels until your eyes water. Leather aged in a mix you tune by hand. The exact tan of 40-year-old cement, correct on the 9th attempt. 11 full builds go in the bin. 11 complete shoes. Better than anything the top line ever shipped. You cut everyone apart with a blade because a heel curve was 1/10 of an inch generous and you couldn't know it. 9 weeks each. You never told anybody. Then, at 3 in the morning in year 3, photograph 12. Everybody knows photograph 12. 15 years of forum threads agree the left collar looks crooked because the scan was bad. The most boring settled fact in the hobby. You put a straight edge on the monitor. It isn't the scan. The 85 line ran hot into a trade show. A machine drifted. And for one afternoon the collars came out wrong and everybody who looked at that photo since assumed the picture was lying, not the shoe. So you build the mistake in, by hand, off by 1/16 of an inch. On purpose. The most expensive decision of the project, and it costs 11 weeks because the machine that made that error stopped existing in 1991. You finish on a Tuesday at 4 in the morning. You set the pair next to the 12 photographs and look back and forth a long time, and you cannot tell which is which. And it lands on you that in 4 years you've looked at those photographs more than at any living human face, and there's nobody to show it to. Not the collector, he wants the object. Not the making of it. Not the floor. Not a woman. Not a friend, because you don't have that kind. The old man was right, and you finally hear what he said. A glass case isn't a reward. It's the only room where a thing like this can exist, because everywhere else somebody has to explain where it came from. You press the flat of the butter knife into the foam under the right soak liner. Same dent, 14th time in your life. Then you lock it in the safe in Bay 3, because a storage unit doesn't have one. Marcus is at the far end of the floor with a clipboard. He watches you spin the dial. Level 7. Underground manufacturer. Thursday. The safe in Bay 3 is open, the box is gone, and Marcus hasn't badged in for 6 days. You stand there with the door swung out and your hand still on it, and run the 4 or 5 reasonable explanations in about 9 seconds. Then you stop. There aren't 4 or 5. You find it 4 days later, online, like everybody else. Lot 114. The largest sneaker auction on earth. In New York, the one with a paddle and a room and a live feed. Your pair, shot on gray seamless under museum lighting, described in 3 paragraphs of the most careful English you have ever read. Provenance. A storage locker outside Phoenix, bought at Lyon, contents unexamined, consigned through the estate of a man who died in February. It's a beautiful story. It's the only kind of story that could explain a pair like that surfacing at all, which is why he picked it, and why nobody is going to question it. Here's the trap. It takes you 11 minutes to see all of it. If it passes authentication, it sells for a number with commas you don't use. And Marcus takes every cent. And you can't say one word because the shoe you'd be claiming was built in a storage unit by a man with no license, no company, and no legal reason on earth to be holding a factory archive. And if it fails, if one specialist puts a loop on the medial glue line and says the wrong sentence out loud, then the houses go back. Not just this lot. 10 years of lots. They reopen every sale that ever came out of this region, and every buyer who ever felt uneasy files a claim, and the men who go to prison for that are never the ones with lawyers. They're the ones on the floor. They're a 71-year-old man in a cutting room whose entire crime was telling a kid about glass cases. You are the only person alive who can prove that shoe is fake. Proving it is a confession to all of it. And here's the joke. By now you have your own room, 6 people, a rented unit in Rialto, better tools than that warehouse ever had. On paper you're a manufacturer. Here you're a man who can't walk into a room and say one true sentence about his own hands. So you call the collector. You call to tell him his pair has surfaced, and you get about 4 words in before you understand, from the quality of his silence, that he already knows. He's been registered to bid for 9 days. You ask him carefully, because you're still hoping whether he intends to stop it. And he explains in the reasonable voice of a reasonable man that he does not. That a certified pair with an auction record and 3 specialist names behind it is worth more and is safer and is simply better than the same object handed to him in a bag by the man who made it. He'd rather own it authenticated than own it honestly. A fire took 41 cases off him. He has decided the world owes him one back, and he isn't particular about the shape it arrives in. You sit in your car outside a rented unit for a long time after that. The man who made you promise it would never be sold is the underbidder. You book the flight that night. There are 2 things in your jacket when you go through security at LAX. A gas station receipt from when you were 16, gone soft at the folds, with an address on the back you haven't needed in 15 years. And a butter knife. You don't have a plan. Level 8. Counterfeit King. The authentication runs 9 hours. 3 specialists in a room you aren't allowed into. A CT scanner. An XRF gun on the eglets, because alloy composition is a fingerprint of a decade. Ultraviolet on the adhesives. And a database with every documented example of that model, all 22. They spend 40 minutes on the collar seam. Of course they do. You're in a hotel lobby on Lexington with a phone at 9%, refreshing a page that hasn't changed since morning. You could tell them exactly what they're looking at and what they'll look at next. Nobody in that building has spent more time with that shoe. You gave it 4 years and 11 weeks. They get 9 hours, and they decide what it is. At 20 to 7 in the evening, the listing updates. Authenticated. Unanimous. The lot goes live 2 days later and doesn't stop climbing. Not the way things climb the way a fire climbs, in jumps, with people laughing nervously between bids. It closes at a number that resets the record for a pair of shoes. Not that model. Any shoes. Ever. And a room full of people stand up and applaud a man you've never met, holding a paddle, who now owns 4 years of your life and a mistake you made on purpose. You watch it on a hotel television with the sound off, eating Taco Bell you walked 11 blocks to find because it's the only thing in this city that costs what things cost at home. 2 days after that, a trade publication runs 1,100 words with a retired line supervisor from the original factory. 78 years old. He worked the 85 run. He says it flatly, the way old men do when nothing's left to take. The run was rushed to hit a trade show. The medial glue line was bad across the batch and they shipped it anyway. The collars came out crooked because a machine drifted and nobody stopped the line, and he's been waiting 40 years for one person to ask him about it. The pair that just broke every record in the world has none of those defects. None. Except one. A collar off by 1/16 of an inch, cut in by hand on purpose, over 11 weeks by the only man alive who believed the photograph. Your shoe isn't a convincing fake. Your shoe is built better than the thing it's pretending to be. Then the floor drops out of the market, and it takes about a week. Because if that passed 9 hours, a CT scanner, and 3 of the best specialists on the planet, what's sitting in every vault, on every shelf, in every climate-controlled case, owned by every man who ever told you the difference is obvious? Nobody can answer it. That's the problem. Grails get pulled from sale. 2 insurers stop writing new policies on the category. And the authenticator gloves, loop, 9-minute video takes his channel private on a Sunday night and never posts again. You are, anonymously, the most consequential shoemaker of your generation, and there's not one human being you can prove it to. Marcus finds you outside the building on the last day. 20 years. He's 36, wearing a good coat. And for the first time since a Sunday swap meet, he needs something from you that he can't take by bending it until it opens. He needs your silence. He knows he needs it. He hates that you can hear it in his voice. Name it. You look at him a while. You think about a stove burner and a bent knife and a man clamping a sole under the leg of a couch, and you tell him the only true thing available. It held 9 hours in that room, not 40 minutes. He waits for the rest of it. There isn't any rest of it. 6 weeks later, the raids start. They don't start with Marcus. Level 9. Legendary shoemaker. They padlock Bay 3 on a Tuesday. The old man from the cutting room is 71. There's a photograph of them walking him out through the front hallway, and in it, he's holding his reading glasses in his hand, because they took the case at the door and he didn't want to bend them in his pocket. 40 years of work, 18 at a real factory. And he goes down for a shoe he never touched in a room he was never allowed into because his name was on a shift sheet. Marcus is gone inside 2 weeks. No forwarding, no country anybody can name. The money moved before the first door came off a hinge. He spent his whole life saying shoes were units that moved. He turned out to be one. You spend a weekend destroying 20 years. Templates burn fine. Patterns burn fine. Paper is paper. Lasts don't. Lasts are dense plastic, and dense plastic doesn't burn. It slumps and keeps its shape and smells like a house fire. So you cut them apart first, one at a time, with a saw. Nobody would put that part in the story. The perfect pair took 4 years and 11 weeks. Everything else you ever made took 11 hours and a hardware store blade. Years pass. More than you'd think. The exhibition is on the second floor of a design museum in New York, in a room held at 68 degrees. It's a Wednesday. There are 11 people on the tour. The case sits in the middle of the floor. You can walk all the way around it. The guide has a lanyard and the specific enthusiasm of someone who has said this 1,000 times and still means it. She tells them this is considered one of the finest sneakers ever produced. She talks about the collar. A kid at the back, 16 maybe, in cheap Adidas of his own, asks how long it took to make. She says nobody knows. It came out of a factory in 1985 and nobody wrote it down. You're standing 4 feet away. 4 years and 11 weeks. 11 complete builds in a bin. 9 attempts at the color of a glue line. A 16th of an inch, cut in by hand, because you were the only man alive who believed a photograph. You could end all of it with one sentence. Ask her to lift the right soak liner. Under the foam, at the heel, there's a dent the size of a grain of rice, pressed with a bent butter knife out of a kitchen drawer. It would burn this museum's provenance to the ground by dinner and put your name on the finest shoe anybody here has ever seen. You've had the sentence ready for years. You've said it out loud in your car. You don't say it. The tour moves on. You stay, and you look at a shoe that's been sitting in a case under lights for years now, and nothing is coming apart. The toe isn't open. The sole isn't breathing. No gap, no lift, no line at the seam where it started to go. You think about a kitchen table and a stove burner and a $4 can of cement and a man clamping a sole under the leg of a couch. 40 minutes. You made a pair that never falls apart. That was the whole promise. That was all of it. You kept it. On the way out, on the escalator down, you catch yourself doing the thing. Thumb along the outsole of your own shoe, at the toe, right where they always go. You've done it since you were 11. You do it in airports. You do it in Costco checkout lines. You do it in other men's houses. You try to stop. You can't. And somewhere underneath all of it, quiet, still going, something is counting to 40. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to my channel and leave a comment where you're watching from.